Detective Thorpe, before you talked to Kenneth Copeland, did you know that Jeffrey Williams had rented a Corvette before he rented the gray Infiniti?
No, ma'am.
After you spoke with Mr. Right, did you also, without talking about what anybody said, speak with a person with the last name Stillwell, Tremont Stillwell?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you speak with that person along with ADA Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that in the DA's office?
Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned earlier that you put out a picture, a photo of the person entering the barbershop with a gun, I'm going to show you what has been admitted as State's Exhibit 292 Charlie, 292 Yankee Charlie 2, and ask you if this is generally the depiction that you release to the public.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And I'm going to now show you State's Exhibit. Just 1 second. 5 Yankee. 5 Yankee. And ask you whether this is or isn't similar to the photograph that you released to the public. Just 1 second. And while we're actually pulling up, it's going to be a different exhibit. I'll ask you this. After speaking with Kenneth Copeland, did you also speak with Antonio Sledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall who all was in the room or in the interview with Mr. Sledge?
Yes, should be Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither.
All right. And did you also speak with Diamante Kendrick?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was in the room when you interviewed him?
Detective Gaither and Detective Dennis.
Did you also interview Shannon Stillwell?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Who was in the room when you interviewed him?
I believe it was Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither on that one also.
And were all of these interviews captured in the same way that the interviews in normal interview rooms are recorded, audio and video?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Showing you 296 Yankee. Is 296 Yankee reflective generally, like, of the area that you put out or depicted when you put out the photo of the car passing by the barbershop?
Yes, ma'am.
After you did you learn about a Kelvin Treadwell during the course of your investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever speak with Mr. Treadwell?
I believe so.
Okay. After, did you know about a person by the name of Javaris Bradford before you turned your file over to the district attorney's office?
No, I did not.
Did you learn about a person named Javaris Bradford afterwards?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall where you first heard the name Javaris Bradford in the course of this investigation?
The fall investigation done by Senior 88, Mike Sprinkle, and his team.
All right. Ariel Bax, had you heard that name prior to turning over the case to the district attorney's office?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did you learn that name after ADA Sprinkle began looking into this case?
Yes, ma'am.
What about, did you know about a person by the name of Kenya Morton?
No, ma'am.
Did you learn about Kenya Morton after you turned the case over to ADA Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you personally ever pull any phone calls from the jail from a Martinez Arnold?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Were you now? Did you personally ever interview or speak with Mr. Williams, Jeffrey Williams?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Tell me if you interviewed or knew of, rather, the name Justin Cobb before you turned the case over to the DA's office?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you remember how you first learned of that name?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you learn about it before your investigation, or did you know of that name before you began the investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas?
No, ma'am, during.
Did you speak with Justin Cobb before you turned the case over to the district attorney's office?
I do not believe so.
Would you tell the jury whether, after the interviews that you made, whether you conducted any other acts to further your investigation, either in conduct, in tandem with Mr. Sprinkle or someone else, in order for you to further your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas, without telling what anybody said?
Okay. Yes, I did.
What types of other actions did you take to further your investigation?
Interviews.
Mhm.
We conducted several interviews afterwards,
Okay.
in which they took the lead.
And who took the lead?
ADA, senior ADA Mike Sprinkle.
And after those interviews, and when you collected cell phone records, was it you that plotted them, or did you simply aid in collecting the cell phone records?
ADA collected cell phone records and sent it all over to the ADA's office.
Okay. Did, before you turned your case over to the district attorney's office, did you execute a warrant for people who were not later indicted for the murder of Donovan Thomas?
No, ma'am.
Did you, and by a warrant, I mean, did you have a cert or an arrest warrant signed for Antonio Sledge for the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, I believe so, I did.
Is that a person that the district attorney's office declined to prosecute for the murder?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you execute an arrest warrant for Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the district attorney's office decline to prosecute Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the district attorney's office indict people that you had not arrested or executed arrest warrants for?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Was one of those persons Javoris Bradford, as it relates to the murder of Donovan Thomas?
I
to your
believe.
knowledge?
I believe so.
And what about Justin Cobb?
I believe so also.
And did the district attorney's office execute or indict the remaining people that you executed arrest warrants for?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
How long is it customary to investigate a murder? Do you have a certain timeline that you have to finish it by?
No, ma'am.
Do you close it after one arrest, or if there are other suspects, or do you continue to investigate it?
Continue to investigate.
Is it unusual for you to investigate a murder for over a year, or is that common?
No, ma'am, it's not unusual.
Okay. And so over the course of a year, can you tell the jury what is it that would take a year versus allowing you to finish a murder in 48 hours, like you might see on TV? Your Honor,
I mean, sustained, you might be able to ask them the different, but sustained as to that question.
yes, Your Honor. Would you tell the jury some of the factors that led to the length of time that you investigated this particular murder, generally speaking?
Cooperation, other substantial evidence, physical evidence from the scene, tangible, and that there was a series of people that we had to interview to suss out what was good leads, what was bad leads.
Okay. Were you ever given any, were you ever able to obtain any surveillance footage from a McDonald's on Cleveland Avenue?
I believe I was not to my knowledge.
Did you make an effort when you obtained information in an interview to follow up on each piece of information, or did you just discard some and just?
No, I followed up on.
Just 1 second, Your Honor. Can you describe for the jury where the are you familiar with a place called the Green Store?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of place is the Green Store?
It's one of the local neighborhood convenience stores, mom and pops.
Okay. Were you ever able, or did anyone ever give you reason to believe there was surveillance footage at the Green Store of interest to you?
Not to my knowledge.
When you interviewed people who were under arrest, did you make certain to always read them their rights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if they weren't under arrest, was there ever any reason to read any rights?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, just 1 second. Do you recall the time, the exact specific time that you took the warrants out for the murder of Donovan Thomas, arrest warrants?
I believe it was around the month of November.
Of what year?
2015.
Okay. And do you remember when it was that you turned the case over to the DA's office?
January of 2016.
Okay. Did you know the name Demise McMullen?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you learn about that name prior to turning the case over to the DA's office?
No, ma'am.